Hey everybody, this is Rebekah Weintraub and you are watching Transforming Today Show. Today I have a very special guest, Marc Cordon. How are you, Marc?
Oh, I'm living the dream, Rebekah. It's great to be here.
I love when you say that. It makes me so happy. It's so positive of you.
It makes me happy to live the dream. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm having a great day, great weekend, so all is well over here. Yep.
Yeah, I love your set. Like, I feel so plain with my little white background, and then you've got like seahorses, and then there's like an alligator skull there. All those oh my gosh. I need to put something in the background of my set or something. I'm gonna draw something real quick. Can we stop the show and then no? Okay, never mind.
Yeah, but you're so wild and lively that it's like if there was something in the background, we'd just be distracted from your personality. So
Well, and we did. I like how we were on the same wavelength. Like, I got my hair in order with your shirt color today. So
I know,
like,
I almost changed it to blue, but I was like, use my intuition. I'll go with red. All right, so we have so much to talk about today. I cannot wait. When we did our like little pre-thing, getting to know each other, I wanted to ask so many questions that I just held my tongue because I wanted it for the interview. So lot to talk about. First, can you tell our viewers what you do?
yeah. So I'm a life coach, and the folks that I serve are coaches in their first 18 to 24 months of business, and they've got full hearts and maybe not so full calendars. And so a lot of folks come in with sort of a dream of living a certain lifestyle and living fulfilled. And so I use positive psychology concepts and then just straight up simple business concepts to fill the calendars, get a little bit of cash in the pocket, and then folks can stop losing sleep over, oh my gosh, I've got to take another seminar, or I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and I'm missing out on my dream life, and it's getting so stressful. So to take stress away in that first 18 to 24 months and to really go forward and just serve your dream clients. So it's been fun getting to that niche, Rebekah. I started off as a straight up life coach, performance life coach. I worked with everything from roller derby players to people finishing their PhDs. But what seems to have happened was that a lot of people keep coming back and they're like, what are you doing with your coaching business? I'm like, yeah, let's talk. And then it just is getting to the point now where I'm like, hey, maybe I can do this full time. And when I want to talk to a Filipino audience, or I want to talk to a roller derby audience, I can do that pro bono. And then really the full-time business part of things can be in serving coaches where they need to be served.
I love that you mentioned that balance, because that's true for me too. Like if I'm not doing service in some kind of way, like I feel incomplete. And that's like why I started the show, because I felt like we needed a space to highlight coaches, really get to know their personalities and just understand what our entire community is doing. So I share that with you. I need that. I crave it.
Yeah, it's so wild. And you know what? This is the first show that I've come on and I've said what I've said. I am a coach that serves new coaches. Every other show previous to this, I've thrown out to the world, like, before this, I came from an advising background in higher education. So I was used to everyone and anyone coming into my office with, they'd come in with a mental health issue, and I'm like, I know where you can go. They'd come in with a purpose issue, and I'd be like, okay, let's work through this. They'd come with an identity issue, and I'd be able to use identity development models. But now, in terms of claiming what it is that I do as a professional and saying, this is my niche and I claim it, like suddenly it's like you hear it in coaching school all the time: claim your niche, claim your niche, claim your niche. And all of a sudden, now that I'm doing it, marketing is so clear. The folks who are coming in are so clear. The discovery calls are so clear that it's almost not like I have to explain what I do anymore. Like folks are like, okay, there's a guy that does coaching with new coaches. and go to Mark. And then I still get to live that life of my dreams where I do get to do social justice work still. And I get to, talk to roller derby players, and I get to spend time with folks, and I can't wait to see what comes next. So I'm proud to be on the show claiming this sort of level up in my coaching career.
That must feel absolutely incredible, because I know in our community, sometimes it's hard to kind of say, well, I don't want to be sleazy. I don't want to be cheesy about helping other coaches. And it's kind of like this kind of funny territory that's very hard to navigate. But what I'll tell you is that there was someone that I had been watching for a while. Like right when I graduated, there was a person who had an interview, someone who had gone through IPAC, who helps with some of the courses and stuff. And it was like the seed was planted. And for so long I resisted. I'm like, oh, how dare that person, target coaches. I had like this whole negative mentality around it. And then I got to the point where I was pretty much crashing and burning, where I only had a couple clients. I had a lot of other stuff going on. And I just realized like my niche evolved and I needed help. And I was like, all right, I'll reach out to them. And I did. And it is like the best choice I've ever made in my entire life. Everything's flowing. My content is pouring out. I'm building a new website. And it's like, I would have never known these tips and tricks of our trade if I didn't do this. And now I have the whole different take on it. It's not that they're like trying to prey on us to like make money. Like, you guys are really trying to push us forward, build that business, reach as many people as possible, help. And I completely have a different opinion on it now. So I support you.
Yeah, well, thank you for supporting me. I support coaches in general, and I think that was one of the biggest things, Rebekah, in terms of why I became a coach in the first place, was because I saw, as a positive psychologist, this great gaping hole in mental health where everyone is addressing sort of the -1 to 0 areas of mental health, where it's all hands on deck for folks who are in PTSD land, or folks who are dealing with major issues in terms of not being able to function and just getting back to a normal range of functioning. But then I remember, in terms of when I first started studying the humanist movement or positive psychology in general, there was this notion that we can get people from 0 to infinity. Mm-hmm. And the thing was I saw coaching as this place where people could legit become these folks who could help the general public in going from a place of status quo and rising and elevating and going deeper at the same time in terms of transformation and transforming life and as we know it, and not just living the status quo of 3.5 kids and dying with regrets. However, I also saw problems in with coaching in general, and I'll just say it on your show. There's a lot of sleazy folks, and I didn't want to coach coaches at first because I was like, I'm gonna be one of these sleazy folks who is, untrained, and I'm trying to make a quick buck. You're never gonna see me. I'm just gonna record one show and I'm gonna put it on a loop and I'm gonna charge it $99 a month, and you'll never get to access me. You'll only see my VAs. And I see what ICF is doing, the International Coaching Federation, in terms of cleaning that up and getting rid of that malarkey. You told me this was a PG show. I caught myself. Getting rid of that malarkey and getting the trained coaches in who can take people from 0 to infinity. However, what I was also seeing was that I went through IPEC as well to get my coaching degree. But once I went into the coaching world and started networking, I realized there's a dual identity that we as coaches have. We have our coaching identity, but we also have a business identity that's not often given to us naturally when we're doing our coaching hours. We work on, as training coaches, we work on when we have people under contract And then we train as if they've already signed with us. But then there's that whole idea of making sure that we have our contracts in place. How do we make sure that we're getting paid? If we're not getting paid, we're not going to be able to coach long term. And so that coaching identity and that business identity is something that we have to merge to be successful. And I felt very lucky that I pulled on a coach at first, and then I realized that, you know, with getting a book written, with, you know, being able to speak on a regular basis, there was other coaches that wanted to talk about that as well. They wanted that as their awareness strategies as well. I got lucky, and I felt like I could pass this forward. And so I don't feel sleazy about it at all. I'm seeing, you know, I just got a client, and I saw her make her first 2 sales last week, and I see her moxie changing. And even though I'm not jumping in the box with her, I am seeing those outcomes. And I know that as long as she's trained and she's being able to bring business in, she's going to be able to bring more people from zero to infinity in her niche. And so cut this up as much as you want it, Rebekah. I know that that was very long-winded, but I'm unapologetic about where I am right now. And you know what? When I outgrow this and I want to go to another niche, I'll go to another niche.
Well, I am not going to cut up any of it because I think all of it was absolutely valuable. And
Hey.
I cannot wait to hear your story of transformation. But before we do that, or maybe within it, you said the term positive psychology a couple times now. And I know that's kind of like something new that's kind of swooping in. I know nothing about it, and I would love to learn more about it. Could you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So positive psychology is the study of what's going right with people. And so oftentimes in psychology, where it started after World War II was that we'd look at what's going wrong with someone. Let's use the DSM whatever to go and analyze, and let's look at their axis to figure out what's wrong with you, and then we can fix you, right? And you know, that is one way to look psychologically at someone. As things have been changing now, folks have been calling for what is going well. How are we performing at our optimal selves? And then as we're performing at our optimal selves, how can we be aware of that so we can duplicate that some more? In the same way we're looking at dysfunction, we need to look at functioning at an optimal level. And so positive psychology is very much a return to what Abraham Maslow called for. You know, we've got our, if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we get our food, we get our shelter, we get our clothing. And as we start moving up, we have the ability to think about personal transformation, and then move past transformation and think about the service to others and how we can transform others as a result. So the name of my company is called Greater Good, because as a result of your personal transformation, what is your responsibility to the greater good to go and change it? Now, I started in positive psychology, Rebekah, because I was a pretty unhappy person. I was doing social justice work, and it always felt like me versus someone else. I needed to prove I was more right than someone else. And in order to win, someone else needed to lose. We've been trained in IPEC. That's been called level 2 anabolic, or is it catabolic or anabolic? No, catabolic energy, right? So like this destructive energy where I'm not working with another person. And I was burned out. And a lot of people who do social justice work get burned out. And I straight up asked myself, there's got to be a way that I can sustain myself in this movement without burning out and without being upset at people all the time. And that's how I found this idea of positive psychology, which was very woo and cheesy to me at first. However, they were talking about changes in the prefrontal cortex. They started talking about when people are talking about their gremlins or their limiting beliefs, it's actually more of the core brain that's keeping us safe. And I was like, oh my gosh, all of this is coming together, right? Because like the way that I'm perceiving the world is really a few neurons that are wired. And if I can find a way to rewire those neurons, it changes the way I experience the world. And so positive psychology is maybe a more scientific version of woo and whatever. But to me, it was very grounding in the fact that it gave me a little bit of science to have a whole lot more faith in what's going on in the world. And a lot more faith in what's going on in the world gave me faith to look internally and say, wow, if I really change my internal mechanisms, I'm completely changing my world, you know? And I was just, like, it literally changed the way that I viewed spirituality, the way that I viewed social justice. In social justice, it started applying these terms like, how can I be compassionate for people who I used to think were my enemies?
Mm.
And you're beginning to, like, it was working. I was getting more sleep. I felt healthier.
Mm.
And I also felt like I could create boundaries. And I also felt like, in terms of working with students, I was working in higher education. I wasn't sending angry people out into the world.
Mm.
And that was a big deal, not to indoctrinate angry people. So that's positive psychology in a nutshell, Rebekah.
And I love how you weaved it in with your own transformation. That was wonderful. And as you were talking, I had like so many questions. I
Yeah.
think the one that popped out for me most, because I'm really into spirituality and I am an intuition coach. So intuition is all for me, like not all about spirituality, but it's a huge component. Um, I'm wondering, you mentioned science and faith, and I want to know what that specific journey looked like, felt like. Tell me.
Gosh, well, it's an ongoing journey, right? And as I'm just talking with you, I'm thinking about the fact that my interaction with you, and when I get to see the replay of this, and I'm number one counting all the ums and ahs, and my ego is getting all like that. But then when I get past that, sort of thinking about how you're pushing me to really reflect and think about where I've come from and where I'm going, Rebekah. Um, I think first of all, I came from a place where spirituality and religiosity weren't different, and so when you talked to me early on in my life about spirituality, I would talk about Catholicism,
Mhm.
right? And I do remember there was a point, especially when I went into my PhD program, where I was like, I'm all about empirical data. Spirituality is fake, and so is Catholicism. I'm doing these blind movements. I'm not thinking about anything. I believe in magic, and if there's no empirical data, it doesn't exist. And in fact, I remember going to church, and I was kneeling and saying, I was looking at the crucifix, saying, this is not real. I am praying to a piece of wood right now, right? And I remember a week later, I went to a positive psychology conference, and there was someone there who was talking about and faith and neuroscience. And I came in, and I was like, I'm gonna blast this dude. And I came in, and respectfully afterwards, I was like, look, man, like, you cannot tell me as someone who's done empirical replicable studies that faith and anything more than anything greater than ourselves is real. And he said, well, if you knew your stuff about science, my friend, you'd understand that people who operate from a place of spirituality, or understand that there are things greater than themselves, or people who go into the act of faithing, or people who have hope in their life, or even people who do things like pray, um, have shown huge increases in parts of their prefrontal cortex, which has to do with living a more satisfied life, a happier life, less regrets at the end of your life, more well-being indicators. And so before you go spouting off about all this stuff being false, I would advise you to go and look at the research. And when I looked at the research, he was completely right that believing in things greater than ourselves, um, uh, having optimism, even practicing hope, were associated with growth in our brains. And when I saw that, I then began to ask, well, then how can I apply this to my student? Because now that I'm seeing this, and now that I'm changing myself in terms of what my opinions are about this, I need to figure out how to apply this to the greater good. Also, at the same time, I don't know if you would call this things like spirituality, but I started looking at Reiki healing. I started looking at much more Eastern philosophies. I started looking at Greek philosophy, and folks will go and say that, it's all the same. But there was a point where I was like, oh my gosh, there is really something that's very universal about this. And there is something very petty about the way that we're translating this. And there could be something about our own egos getting in the way of something that is really huge right now. And like, it could be an Indigo Girl song, right? I went to the doctors, I went to the mountains, and I'd come to people and they'd be like, yeah, no, duh, man. Like, welcome to the first part of like consciousness. And that's when I really started getting into things. I think another thing, when you're talking about intuition, Rebekah, and spirituality, one of the huge things that really hit me hard was the work, or at least Ken Wilber, and him discussing some of the more interesting findings that people are discovering about neurons. And when we think about neurons, Rebekah, where's the first place you think neurons are located in our body?
In my brain, of course.
Exactly, right? And as a neuroscience major, I thought that was the only place that they were ever located. And what people were finding were that there were some neuronal patches that were outside of the brain, and two major parts were around the chest, and then there was one lower part around the gut. And suddenly, I'm getting goosebumps because I remember when they said this, it lit up that, oh my gosh, when they say go with your head and go with your heart, those were two big ones. And then I remembered in IPEC, they said the third dimension of making decisions is one that goes past your head and your heart, and it goes into maybe gut feelings, intuition. And so the fact that intuition is not only something that could be around us and we pick up by tuning into things, but also things that when we spiral into ourselves, you just get this gut feeling that it's time to leave higher education. And I don't know why, because I'm getting paid pretty well. And I'm also like heart-wise getting full, but I don't know why I'm getting pulled to leave it, And so there's something miraculous when you start paying attention to it. And as a positive psychologist and a neuroscientist, I admit it goes beyond positive psychology. It goes beyond what we know. And there's something super miraculous about that. And I think we have to let empirical data stay here, but then the experience of life is something that is just so much larger than that. And that's why, like, when I go and say, hey, I charge new coaches money so that they can make money, on paper, it doesn't sound very much. But when you see them firing here, and intuition wise, they knew that they were taking a big leap to leave their HR job or their job as a big time leader in, a consulting firm. And they know that it's coming together, and their intuition was right. There's something more to that. And for me, that's where I get my purpose. So I don't know how to answer spirituality and neuroscience. I'm still learning. But what I can tell you is that, Rebekah, there is a whole lot of learning that we have to do that sometimes science cannot explain. And sometimes it just comes from going on your journey.
I love everything that you said. And can I take us a step further on intuition? Okay. So my definition of intuition, after living kind of an extreme life, that started when I was really young. Like, you don't have a life like mine when you start that young and not be destined to help other people. We'll put it that way, right? So intuition, my definition, it's 4 components, it's 4 dimensions. It's the mental, it's the emotional, it's the physical, which you were describing, which is the gut, and it's the spiritual. And so the inner power that we have is composed of the first 3 dimensions. And the outer power that we're connected to always is the 4th dimension. So most people think that intuition is just the 3rd dimension, that gut feeling that we have. Ooh, I just had a feeling, it's the physical sensations. Ooh, I just got chills, things like that. Now, usually it manifests in our gut as primarily fear and anxiety. And so fear is when we are clearly fearing something, maybe based on the past, something we've experienced before, something we're afraid of, the shady guy down the street that you need to move to another street because you're afraid. And then the anxiety side of it, which is, maybe it's more about excitement and looking forward to something where you get those butterflies inside your gut, right? But that is just one dimension. When we have all 4 powering together and firing off together, what happens is we get into a place of clairvoyance or clairaudience or clairsentience. Okay. And so what ends up happening is if we are cleared out our inner, we work to release resentments in the mental. We work through harms that were done to us or done to others in our emotional. And we work through that gut feeling, which are, what was the 3rd one? Fears, our fears, and anxiety that's in our 3rd one. If we do the work to clear all of that out or most of it out, what ends up happening is we create this channel where now that spiritual dimension can come in, fill us up, and now we're operating on this optimal level where in a coaching session, you hear phrases, words, actual questions. You don't even have to think. You're not stuck in your head. You're not stepping into their box. You don't have like fear going on that you're not the best coach in the world. You just are. You're there with your client. It's all flowing through, and something bigger than you is powering your session, powering your life. And so for me, intuition is like all 4 dimensions just absolutely operating on an optimal level.
So, Rebekah, let me ask you this.
Hey, whose interview is this?
This is the transition where I take over as the co-host. I'm getting curious now. I'm sorry. So, when we're born, are we born knowing this? Or is this something that we have to learn throughout our lives? We have to develop these skills because, you kind of talked about clearing out. Are we born cleared out? And then as we accumulate, it gets dirty? Or
we are born with our abilities. It's like our characteristics. We can't get rid of our characteristics, but we can highlight them, highlight our assets, and we can mute or quiet things that don't, characteristics that don't serve us, right? So as we grow, as we have experiences, as people hurt us, as we hurt other people, as we have resentments, as we have these fears growing, it clouds up who we truly are
Yep.
and what we
Okay.
were born with. And therefore, we have to actively clear that out in order to just shine purely into the world again with that connection with our outer power.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you know this. There's a show that I host too, and but about 50% of the folks who come on the show, when they're tracing back their past, will go and say, "I kind of had this when I was younger," and then they talk about like this long 30-year period where it went away, and then almost like your show, the transformation is them coming back to things that they were told to unlearn as a kid. You know, the other 50% are like, I have no idea. Like, it's almost like something came out of the sky and hit me, you know? So I've always wondered that, you know, and I love the way that you put those four things together, because that's what I couldn't explain. You know, I was like, the intuition kind of stops at the gut, but then there's something more to that, and I can't explain it.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
there's
and
something that's bigger than us, right? Obviously, we don't make the food come out of the ground. We don't make the sun set at night. There's clearly some kind of power that does that, right? So we can all agree, like even people who are skeptics, it's like they can't say that they're making the sunset or the sunrise, right? Like there's something else out there. And if we can learn to tap into that, and we can let that fill all the space where when we do have doubt or we are questioning ourselves and things like that, pushing that aside and letting that power come in, like there truly is no stopping us. Like, because that's when you have miracles everywhere. That's when, you know, those serendipitous moments are like your entire life. And that's when you really enjoy life because it's so much fun. And it's actually funny because like my personal higher power, like, is so funny, like cracks me up all the time. And I recognize it because I'm aware, because I work on making sure I clear myself out so that I can participate on that level.
yeah.
So I don't know. Back to you though. This is not my interview.
Dang it, because I had more questions.
Well, I remember you asking me to be on your show, so let's reserve that.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do that.
So back to you. Okay, so how are you threading positive psychology into, because I know you did that for a little while as your niche, is that right? You were focused.
I still do. I will never be,
Okay.
I just because I work with a certain type of person who with a certain challenge doesn't mean I'm going to decouple it from positive psychology. So I think the greatest part of positive psychology is that in terms of looking at what's working, you're moving towards optimal performance, and optimal performance is almost at an individual level. It's almost unlearning the fact that what works for Rebekah won't work for Marc. And so ultimately, I, Marc, have to write my own blueprint for my life. And so you can come in, I can come in and I can say, let me look at Rebekah's sales script. And then I can take your sales script and you could be 10 for 10. And I could read that sales script and say, how come I'm not selling to anybody? It's because it's Rebekah's sales script.
Mm-hmm.
I have to coach someone to write their own sales script and feel that sales script. So when they go on, they can put the script down and they know where they're coming from. They're almost coming from an intuitive place, right? And so I will always use positive psychology wherever it is that I go. That's what I love about it, is that I don't have to throw it in people's face though. You know, I don't have to be like positive psychologist to the coaches. No, I know in terms of what a coach wants, when they come in, they need to fill their wallet and they need to fill their calendar. They don't care how it's done, you know? And for me, my discipline is positive psychology. Let's not throw everything out right now. Let's not start from zero. Let's not throw out your website and all this stuff and start. let's look at what's working. Okay, we haven't thought about your strengths yet. Your number one strength is humor, and you're not using it.
Mm.
Well, your number one strength is vision, and you're not feeling your vision right now. So let's get those things firing. Let's get that humor going. And for example, when I was working in a college, I was telling you before the show, I put on a collar for you. When I was working in a college, I wasn't feeling the ties every day. The hair was black, and I always felt like this red-headed fun guy, like with a white screen and stuff like that. And I never popped off jokes. I never did those things. And I realized at some point when I went and looked at my strengths that I wasn't using them. And maybe that's why I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled. On paper, everything was according to the way it should go. Immigrant parents come to this country. Son goes and gets his PhD. He's on a track to getting tenure and becoming a dean. But inside of me, it wasn't making any sense whatsoever, you know? Like I wanted to be the Michael Jackson of coaching or something, and it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And I felt like I wasn't a grown up. I felt like I was a child, and everyone knew what I should be. And the more I ignored that, the more I was going off of my path, the more that I went off of my path, the more I needed to live basically a living hell. And I would learn to love that living hell at some point. I would grow up and I would grow into the position. And I realized that it was bleep backwards. The internal mechanism all over here, the internal mechanisms yelling at me from all over, I was ignoring. And I was listening to someone else's blueprint.
Mhm.
And the thing was that it was important that I had those conversations with the people who had high expectations for me and let them know that, you know what, I think I understand. You don't want me to struggle. Yet also at the same time, I don't know if the point of life is to completely live without struggle.
Mm.
And to see my folks go from another country to this country in which they struggled, like you probably couldn't take that out of my DNA.
Mm.
And I needed to go through something in which I went from a place of comfort to a place of discord in order to really get to a place where I truly imagined myself being at some point, And I'm not fully there yet. I'm not saying that I've had my happy ending and all that stuff, but the journey is so fun, Rebekah.
So let's talk about that in terms of your clients, right? So when
Yeah,
you customize something for them, when you
yeah,
recognize those assets, those unique qualities that make them them, that, starts immediately shifting that script to be theirs. I assume that's difficult for them because it's partly coming out of a comfort zone, like you were mentioning, that they've been kind of sitting in for a while. But at the same time, I bet it's exhilarating because you're bringing out a part of them in this medium that maybe they haven't even discovered or felt yet. So
yeah,
I know you can't. I know you can't. You can't exactly feel the feelings that your clients are
yeah.
feeling. However, I know you're a very empathetic person. What is it like for those clients when you're going through that process?
Oh gosh, I think you'd have to ask them. What I do know though is that again, the work of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who talked about getting people into flow states, the work of challenge, support, and readiness in positive psychology are things that I think about all the time. There is, if we were to think about a three-part like dartboard, right? The bullseye in the center is our comfort zone, and we can live in that comfort zone. And when someone chooses to get into a monetary exchange, an energetic exchange with a coach, they're choosing to say, okay, I see myself living outside of this comfort zone, right? So as a coach, part of the obligation is to challenge and support their readiness. And as they come in and say, I'm ready, you kind of explore, well, what is outside of your comfort zone? Ooh, this is dissonance right now. I know, but also at the same time, Is there excitement there? You know, is there a certain, this could be an overused term, but is there an authenticity here in living in this expanded space, right? But also at the same time, outside of that expanded space is also a breaking zone. If you go beyond the challenge point, optimal performance goes down. If you go beyond a challenge point, there's just some things people can't do. I can't have I can't go and say your mindset is ready for you to be an astronaut, Rebekah, and so lead people to Mars tomorrow. You may not have the skill set yet, and so that might go into a breaking point. And so it's important for us to live in the discomfort zone, but not in the breaking zone. And within that discomfort zone, we can still have fun and dance. That's where we talk about enjoying the process. That's also where we talk about separating. Okay, it may be painful, but you're not suffering right now. This is also where we can look at natural processes. If you lift weights, you're sore the next day. When you grow up, as a child, you have growing pains. And so also in terms of your spiritual, purposeful self, that will also have a growing pain. You will also have growing pains with the fact that when you start making declarations that are outside of your comfort zone, and your friends who have been living in the comfort zone with you and protecting you and seeing you live outside of this comfort zone might try to protect you and say, Rebekah, you can't do that. And all of a sudden you have this dissonance with the external world. And how do you address some of those things? Maybe some of my clients might have been living in the comfort zone for a while, and their partners, their husbands, their wives are saying, don't do that. What are you doing? That's part of the reason why I keep holding this book up. Don't worry, you'll get the book for free, everybody. That's part of the reason I wrote this book, not only to help you set up your business, but also as you're making declarations, which is one of the most powerful things you can do, is you come to a wall and you say, you know what? I'm throwing my backpack over that wall and I'm finding a way to get to the other side. And people saying, you are absolutely bat crap crazy, Rebekah, to do that. Everything you've done, you've thrown to the other side of the wall. What are you doing? But you know inside of your head, you've made a big, hairy, audacious goal. And in making that goal, that's where you know you are destined to be, you know? And so, again, bringing it back to Maslow, Brother Maslow went and said, what one thinks they can be, they must be. Because if you knew you could be that at some point in your life, that's where you carry on these burdens. And at the end of your life, you're at your deathbed saying, I really probably should have left my corporate job and gone after something. I really wish I would have taken that chance, you know? And truly, in terms of what the biggest thing that I love seeing is not people at the end of their lives, but people saying, I am living my full life right now. And that's the best thing ever, because you know that they're at the edge of that comfort zone and they're still pushing themselves. So I think just to get to your question again, you don't get them out of their discomfort zone because, you know, you're this person that wants to see people in pain, but it's more so that when they are ready, you know that you're the right person for them. And if you're not, you need to decide as a coach, do not chase the money and do not chase the person. Know you're the right coach for them. And so that's also been something that's really fun for me too, is being able to say no to people and make references and say, you got to go to Rebekah. That $10,000 looks really nice right now, but I also know that I'll do you a disservice if you stick with me. So it really is this great partnership in which you know that you're serving them, and you also know that you're learning from them and becoming a better person. It's awesome.
So let's talk about the other side. Okay. So like if you're living in the discomfort, and I truly believe that pain is in the resistance. It's not in the work that you have to do. It's not in the feelings that you're feeling. Those come and go. We acknowledge them. We can let them go. It's the resistance, right? But once we're past the resistance and we get to this point where things are starting to open up, opportunities are starting to come in more than they were. We're getting into that flow state, or we are in that flow state. When we start entering that world, how are you supporting your clients?
You mean when the client starts seeing it manifesting? Is that
It's
what I
a
mean?
whole new, like, some
Yeah.
people have never experienced that before. Some people, like, perspective is going to
Yep.
shift. They're like, all of that. It's a whole new world. So how,
Yep.
like, and that can be scary, even though it's exciting,
Yeah.
it can be scary. So I'm wondering how you support them through the good.
Yeah. So I think it's it's the beginning of the facts of life, right? You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both in there.
There you have the facts of life.
I like the singer saying, yes. There's a certain expectation that you set at the beginning, and in terms of this is where I really feel the privilege of having studied neuroscience, and then having gone through positive psychology, and then going through a really solid coaching program. In talking about some of the things that are going to change with the person, right? They're very outcome driven many people are. They're very outcome driven at the beginning. I need this, I need this, I need this to happen. Okay. Also understand that in making a shift, your mind is going to start rewiring itself. And as it rewires itself, there are going to be some beliefs that you let go of and new ones that you shift into. It takes, just like if a person is changing any kind of behavior, it takes a while for the brain to get used to that. And so it's almost like stretching a rubber band, right? If you let go of the rubber band at some point, the rubber band will go back to where it was. That's what the brain does when it's rewired. It's a train track. It just keeps doing the same thing until you change the train track, right? Now, what happens through coaching, what happens through mindset shift is that you stretch the rubber band, but when you let it go, it stays there.
Mm.
But often what happens is that people think that when you reach a certain outcome, there are other things that will go away, such as your gremlins. But what happens is that when you rewire, the gremlin rewires. And so for example, I had a client go from making, not what they were happy with in terms of financial, to making a lot financially very quick. And suddenly they went from feeling sort of, what do I need to do? Maybe I'm not good enough as a coach. And when I'm making this much money, it's going to be so much better when it goes away, to making a lot of money and them saying, I'm a total imposter. If they find out about me, I'm screwed, And the thing was that the gremlin went with them.
Mm.
So even when it's ostensibly good, there are new things that appear. And what I call it with them is, you're coming in right now and you're managing drama. What happens is that it seems like things that wouldn't be dramatic become dramatic when you start going to these other levels. And it's just because that part of the brain that wants to keep you safe is still trying to keep you safe in a different way. So when you go to, let's say, another level of financial or another level of getting exposure, you start thinking to yourself, maybe I shouldn't be here. Maybe I'm a total phony. And what if they find out? And so it's being prepared for that, and knowing that, I wouldn't say be careful what you wish for, because in when you go from one side to another, there really is some other things that follow you. And so there's this idea of self-concordance. And self-concordance in positive psych and in other places is the idea that you are doing what you truly love doing. And money, exposure, anything external, even if there were no cameras on us right now, and you and I were just talking, this is the same dang thing we'd be talking about, Rebekah, only I'd be cursing more, right? And you'd be doing these like singing things with me, blah, 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 blah.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling.
Right. So we are doing what we truly love, regardless of what we expect in return, when we start doing those self-concordant things, that's really when we start living in this place where, I think when you're talking about resistance, the resistance really starts going away. I think you're really right. I think most people fight against things for a very long time. And then when they, I don't know if acceptance is the word. I don't know what you call it, but
It's
you know,
it's
when
actually surrender.
surrender, yes,
Yeah.
surrender is so much better. When they sort of surrender to that, all of a sudden, like it's, I would compare it to this metaphor. It's like people have been paddling upriver their whole lives and they're saying, why is this so hard? And then they just kind of put their hands up in the air and surrender. And suddenly the river is swift and everything they've ever wanted just happens, you know? And I'm not saying it doesn't take work. I'm not saying that you just kind of lay back, but like self-concordance is that. Self-concordance is that surrender. Self-concordance is that recognition of, I've been going this way when everything has been telling me that it's going the opposite way. And the river is swift and the river is good. And I trust the river and I trust where I'm going. It's awesome to see clients do that. It's awesome to see them do it. And it's also awesome to see them have that aha moment. Versus when I was advising and I'd say, you need to let go of the paddle and you need to do what I say.
Mhm.
And being patient with them and knowing that when the time is right, um, that dissonance just becomes this spiral of amazingness, inward and outward again. I keep making that metaphor, the spiral inward and outward, but that's what, when you see things go into a groove with somebody, it just becomes this machine, and everything is moving. So it's that's part of that miracle, Rebekah. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, it's funny because you're lit up anyway, like that's just your personality. But when you were just talking
Uh-huh.
right a few minutes ago, um, there was another part of you that was like, your eyes were beaming, your skin was glowing, like it was on another level. And so I'm wondering, like, what is it like now doing this niche that feels so right, everything's flowing, like what is it like to live this every day, doing exactly what you're meant to do right now in time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wouldn't say it's a life free of worry or free of fear. But what I can say is that I was having breakfast this morning and I'm sorry, I was having bulletproof coffee this morning, if you want to call that breakfast. Um, and wow, I did not know I was gonna share this. Okay, so there's a shrine, uh, a St. Jude shrine, and I remember going to that shrine. It's my dad's favorite place to go, and so I remember taking him there, and I went there, and I was like, oh my gosh, here I am, a recovering Catholic, going back into St. Jude shrine. But I also remember I was starting my coaching business, and I just remember saying to myself, I'm looking forward to the day that I come back here because I'm going to make a donation on behalf of my dad. And I know exactly how much I'll be making. I know what the paycheck is going to look like. I'm going to check my bank statement on my phone and I'm going to withdraw from that and give that donation. And I was having breakfast this morning and part of me said, I totally forgot. I totally forgot about that. And so I was hard on myself, right? I was like, you dummy, blah, blah, blah. Like all this stuff started coming in, but I was also another part of me. Um, I guess the only way to call it is just this like complete gratefulness, right? Just living gratefully, was like, we can hop in that car and we can make that donation. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I don't think there's words to be able to describe that feeling. I don't think there's words to describe the feeling, when when I left higher education, and yesterday I did my first group coaching program, and I remember feeling like I'm so in the pocket. Like I knew when I left higher education I was going to be teaching again, and and I also knew I wasn't going to be teaching at 11 o'clock at night, being upset about positive psychology. And I was doing it yesterday, and we were doing it in this new form that I've never done before over Zoom, and it's working. It's working. I don't know how to describe that, but I can only hope that um, that I don't know. Whatever. If, for those of you who talk about living in gratefulness, you know how this feels. Oh my God, and I know that these things didn't have to happen. I think maybe I needed to start living in gratefulness before any of that could happen. But I do remember that the first thing that I ever studied as one of the most powerful things you can do in to live your life is to live gratefully, no matter what kind of crap you're feeling. And there's a lot of ups and downs and all arounds in terms of starting your own coaching business, in terms of fighting those gremlins off, and and even little things like getting in front of a camera and having red hair and being like, everyone's gonna think you're a fraud, but being grateful about it and in terms of having that opportunity. And I think for it to come to a head where I'm having a interview with you, Rebekah, and I'm having that realization that, oh, it's time to go to St. Jude and pay him a visit and write him a little check. I think that's awesome. And so I don't know how to describe it, but I do love being able to maybe share it with you. And I don't know.
How will you
It's pretty hard for somebody to get me like at a loss of words, you jerk.
I'm going to take it a step further and ask you, how are you going to sustain it?
Well, you know what? If it's broken, don't fix it. I mean, um, again, I think you start the day living gratefully, you end the day living gratefully. I don't think I'm going to change that. I do know that the days are going to change, and I know that there's a lot lined up for me. Um, uh, I don't think that I wrote a book about resilience for no reason, and I know I'm going to have to be, but I do think that the core of it is really being grateful. And I don't know, and I just trust the process in between that. Um, and you know what, homie? Maybe that's intuition.
Well, I wasn't going to comment, but now that you went there, we are actually, folks, okay, viewers, like if you weren't paying attention, I don't know how you couldn't be, but if you weren't paying attention, we are seeing evidence of all four of your dimensions working together.
Ah!
They
I'm
are
not.
they are cleared out and they are working and something is flowing. And not only are you seeing big miracles, but I'm sure you're seeing small miracles within that gratitude. They're probably everywhere. And they're as small as, like, one time I was driving in my car and I saw this father and daughter, and the daughter was on like her bike for the first time without training wheels. And the father was standing behind her, and I caught this moment of where he was deciding whether to catch her or whether to let her fall.
Mm.
And it was just a split second going by, but it was the right timing. It was that second that I saw on his face and in his body. She was wobbling, and it was like, do I let her fall? Do I catch her? And that's all I needed. I didn't even need to see the outcome, because it's not about the outcome, right? We detach from the outcome.
Oh
But
wow! So
it's
you didn't, the kid crashed and burned.
so it's like like these kinds of miracles are everywhere, even the small ones like that. And
Yeah.
clearly something is flowing for you, something big is flowing for you. And to sustain that and keeping that front of mind, like today when you're like, oh, I really can make that donation now. Now it's front of
Yeah.
mind. Keeping that gratitude front of mind. Like it, I wish you continued success. I know you're already rocking it out of the park. You got to rock it out of the universe soon. And you mentioned your book. So tell us about your book. What's going on there? Hold it up. Hold it
Yeah.
proud.
Well, this is what I love. I had one photo shoot my whole time coaching, and I'm abusing it. Like, this is the only photo I have of myself, right?
Let me see if
So,
I can replicate that. Hold it up for a second. Ready?
oh, the wow face, the wow face. I love it. Uh, so, it was a big thing for me to finish what I started, and one of the hardest things was writing. It always felt like going upstream, and I've had multiple coaches to help me with writing, and this was a thing that came out in a moment of flow, and essentially it started with my story of when I was working in higher education, and um, you know, uh, you know, doing some fun things, and doing some fun things with happiness, and we got it on the university's mission statement. I was getting interviewed on NPR and all this good stuff. We were getting grant money. I was teaching a course in it, but I was totally the most unhappy happiness person ever, and I couldn't figure out why, um and before I even talk about that, the book, I'll talk to you about what really fueled the book. It was through these small moments where I felt like they were these little milestones on my way through something major, and I only realized that it was something major when I looked back and I started connecting what was happening. And the first thing was that I was watching a lecture at Emory. That's where I worked at, from a friend and a sociologist named Corey Keyes, and he was saying there's two ways that we can understand happiness. Um, the first one is we need to be able to get happiness on a daily basis from people. We need to look at our work, and we need to be able to derive happiness from that. I need to be able to be talking with you, Rebekah, and be happy as I'm doing that, not be this sort of phony that's like, I can't wait to get off this interview. Just little things, even if it's I go and drink a coffee after this, right? Little things that make us happy. But then there's also Aristotle's view of happiness, which is, have I lived a good life? Am I living the good life? Am I living with arete, excellence? Am I living with eudaimonia, sort of that the listening to the good voice that's guiding me? And when we can put those two things together, am I living the good life? And am I deriving pleasure in my everyday experiences? Then we're flourishing. And as we're flourishing, we see these outcomes that we never knew would happen faster, more frequently, more often, and it's a miracle. And the woo people would call it going through portals, like all these different things, right? And yet it's all coming back to flourishing. And my first thing that I realized was I was I was neither living in arete, and I was not finding happiness every day. Um, and when you're doing that, it's either called striving or settling. And I was striving in my PhD program, not getting happiness, and I was settling, um, not not to defend it, but I was settling for a job that I felt like I had outgrown, and I was incredibly unhappy. And so this book was basically about my chronicles of coming to the doctors and coming to the mountains and going to the mountains. And I was in both IPEC, the coaching program, and I was also in a positive psychology program. And I was merging the two, because what IPEC was saying was not different from what positive psychology was saying. And this book just merges it. And I walked through the steps and made mistakes. And for anyone who's interested in being a coach and is in their first year, this is what it's all about. Even after the book was written, I didn't claim myself as a coach's coach. But then I was looking at it and I was like, Tal Ben-Shahar, one of the leading scholars, he wrote the book Happier. He's one of the Harvard's leading professors in happiness. He just started the Happiness Studies Academy. Is on the front saying this is a really decent book. And then Bruce D. Schneider, who's the founder of IPEC coaching, said something really nice about it on the back. And I really see positive psychology and coaching coming together. It's the science and the art coming into that miracle zone. And so for anyone who's interested, the book officially comes out. You'll see my mug on places in North America on January 1st, 2019. But if you want the book already, I'm happy to send it to you. Marc, M-A-R-C-C, at Marc Cordon, MarcCordon.com. Email me. Tell me you saw me on Rebekah's show. Tell me about your transformation. That's all I want to hear. And I'll send you the book. A lot of cool people who are also not in coaching have told me that they've used this to achieve their goals, financially, fulfillment-wise, happiness-wise. It's just making me happy about the feedback that I'm getting, and I just love to share it with your audience, Rebekah. So Marc, M-A-R-C, at Marc Cordon, MarcCordon.com, post-edit it, and put my name on the bottom. And I would love to share it with everybody. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it. Bravo, bravo. Like, I have been aspiring to write a book my entire life, and it's coming very soon. In fact, I was working on some content over the last couple of days, and it's just absolutely flowing. Things are coming together for me. So I can only imagine what it feels like to have accomplished that and to be, presenting it to the world, and it's going to be absolutely incredibly received. I know it will be. And my favorite part is that poetically, you have positive psychology on the front, you have IPEC on the back, and it's like, it's supporting you and nurturing, like you're just existing in the middle. Like, I love that. I don't know if you planned that or not, but that's...
No, I didn't, but then like seeing this stuff sandwiched between it, it's just, it was something that hit me when I actually touched the book. And it's y'all, it's an illusion for us to make these things and be like, hey, look at me, I'm a book writer now. You know what? If you want to write a book, like, get in the mindset of writing the book, and then it just manifests. You do have to push through certain things, but it also is this little thing where you get to hold it up and you're like, wow, like, again, this is a part of the privilege of being able to, I guess, surrender, like you were talking about. And for 13 years, I was trying to write anything on positive psychology. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what it was, but some mechanism changed and it flowed. And it's, I just wish anyone who's out there who's feeling like you're coming up against a wall, that if you can envision what's on the other side of the wall, keep envisioning it. It's like a GPS. Your mind, your body, your soul just finds a way. You become more tenacious. It's amazing. I don't know. I just have the most gratitude right now for you bringing me on this show. I think you had me break character, because people who know me on my show know I scream a lot and all that good stuff. So I don't know what to say about this one, homie.
Well, my objective was to get inside Marc Cordon. What makes him tick? What's all that stuff inside that makes up this wild child? And here we are, where this is an intimate conversation, and I absolutely love this. And I, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, Marc.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Is this going to make it on, or was this all jumbly mush that that we need to edit?
It's all going on. It is all going on. We got it all going on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see this, but I have to thank you, because this is definitely this is a very real side. It's not necessarily the Marc that I present on a daily basis, but it's very much appreciated that you could draw it out and push me to think in different ways.
Well, I'm so glad that you did. It was truly a pleasure. And I want to thank our viewers for sticking with us, because this was an absolutely incredible episode. And I got so much out of it. I know you guys did. I can already tell. So like Marc said, if you want that book, you better email him. Go to his website. It's marccordon.com. Email him, marc@marccordon.com, and he will send it to you. It's a little treasure that, now's the time to get it for free, of course, to change your life. Read the book. I know that Marc's personality and everything about him is just going to scream through the pages right onto you. All that positive psychology training is just going to pour into your brain as you're reading. So please do that. And again, thank you, viewers, for being here with us. We love you, and we will see you next time. Bye. All right, we start with smiles. And spirit hands. You can really massage these muscles and kind of like stretch everything out. And then like you can do exercises like pushing your tongue down all different ways. That one feels the best. Like,
I'm ready to take a nap.
that feels so good.
The positive psychologist and the spiritualist are both using the word declaration. Don't tell anyone. We're all on the same page.
This is like terrifying. It could be really good. Bad. I'll give you two that are totally ridiculous. The first one, you block your nostrils and you go, kana, 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 kana.
Oh my God, you have to record this.
I am recording it.
Oh my God, no. Shoot.
Don't use it. Don't do it in the back of your throat. Just like let it kind of sit right up before your nostrils. I even put braids in for you today. Look at a little bit of my wild is coming out.
And look at me. I wore a collar for you.
How funny. I almost did a rockabilly. Like I almost put like a little kerchief in my hair.
No, that'd be great.
I like tried it on and I was like, should I? And so I settled on.
Oh my God, that would be awesome. I mean, I'm loving this look today, but like, I don't know if you know, but like rockabilly is just like the style of styles. Like
I thought it would be for you.
Along with rockabilly.
Yeah. The other one, you block your nostrils and you go, meow, 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 meow. And it's
okay, the neighbors are gonna call.
So at the end, when I say, and Marc, are you promoting anything today? You say Marc @marccordon, like spell out your email, because on the bottom I'll put it in.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm usually obnoxious about it. Like I spell it out like 4 times. Like those like really cheesy like AM commercials, like and email Marc @marccordon.com. That's MARC @ yeah, it's really it's really cheesy, dude.
Love it. Yeah, the other stuff actually, like the skulls up there are like my husband's, because we didn't really have another place to put them. So, but he's here in spirit with me.
Right on.
Not that he died. I didn't mean it that way.
Okay, I was like,
I just think he's downstairs, but he's, he's with me while we do this.
This is going to be an awesome interview. I can tell already.